Hi, this is Kenya, and this is Explorations in Herbalism, or Curious Herbalism, as I used to call it. Now, I want to welcome everyone to tonight's show. It's going to be different because usually, we have the topic of herbs that you can find almost anywhere in most of the shops you go to. But they're herbs that are usually the kind of herbs you would find also in most common gardens. But tonight, we're gonna switch it up a bit. And I feel a little grainy. I feel a little grainy. I'm not sure why. I think it's my signal. So y'all gonna have to forgive me if I feel a little grainy to you. But I think it's the signal over here. But tonight's show is gonna be a little different. And I keep stroking my hair for a reason. Tonight's show, we are gonna talk about rue. Ruda. Narrow leaf veiny rue. I know you've heard of this. At least if you're a magical practitioner, you've probably heard of it. Narrow leaf veiny rue, or ruda, is the herb you often see people use for purification, for money, to clear a space, for cleansing, and all other manner of yummy, yummy, funny, good things. However, it is important to note that when we talk about plants, we want to make sure we're talking about the correct plant. And in this case, I'm talking about narrow leaf veiny rue, and I'm getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. I'm talking about Ruta graveolens. So when you can, try to find out the Latin name of the herbs that you're going to be using. And it's quite possible we're going to move locations because even though I love to show you my beautiful garden in the background, I don't want to be made into food by my mosquito population here. But that seems to be what's happening. I think this little piece of rue may be attracting them. I don't know. If you take a look at it, you'll see that the leaves have little globes. They're globular, they're rounded. They look like little blobs. I'm going to let you look again. And if you look very closely, and if you know any Italian witches, then that should look very, very familiar. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that necklace that hangs from their neck sometimes. It has that little plant on it, and you couldn't identify it. You didn't know what it was. Now you know it's rue. That's right. It's narrow leaf veiny rue. The thing about rue, it does something that a lot of plants don't necessarily do, and that is it helps protect us against malokia, or the evil eye. So before y'all come for me, no, not everybody who has a bad look at you is throwing the evil eye. That's not what I said. But it doesn't hurt to have a little rue to help combat that. I wasn't going to cover rue this evening. I was going to cover rue next week. But something happened today, and I want to share it with you. There was somebody talking about rue, and they thought that this is the only rue there is. And they stated that all the rues, who knows? We're going to say it was me tonight because I don't want to call anybody out. All the rues are the same. No, that's like standing you next to your cousin and saying you're exactly the same. You're not the same. You're two different people, and these are multiple plants. There's three kinds of rue that come to mind right now. So when you're dealing with rue, when you're asking for it, when you're growing it, when you're using it, make sure you're using the rue that you are trying to get to. Ooh, these mosquitoes are getting me. So we're talking about for this evening narrow leaf veiny rue. Okay? Now, one thing you can definitely use rue for is purification and protection. Some people just carry a little bit of it, and that's enough. But I like to enchant or charge my rue. You can even pray over it, you can sing over it, you can talk to it. I'm a little bit about animism, so that's kind of what I would do. But another thing you can do, if the home, I'm getting that mosquito, has some bad vibes or some bad energy, you can bring a piece of rue into the home to help settle the situation down as far as, help clean it out a little bit. I am not a big fan of burning rue. You can, but I'm not a big fan of it. I would prefer you asperger with it, and that is to dip it into some blessed water and just run around and sprinkle. You know, I mean, if you're out in LA from the old days, you might remember that song. Sprinkle me, baby. Sprinkle me. Okay, no gratuitous E40 references in today's episode, but shout out to E40. Okay, and Sugar Tea. But you can asperger, you can sprinkle the water to help clear a space, and the item that you're going to use to do that would be a sprig or a bundle of sprigs of rue. Another thing you can do with rue is to help with your rheumatism if you're looking at it as a remedy. Now, listen, I am not a doctor, nor am I a practitioner of allopathic medicine. I'm not a pharmacist. I am not a certified naturopath, nor am I a certified herbalist. I say this to let you know I'm not telling you to do anything. I want to point that out. I didn't tell you to do anything. You will do what you want to do when it comes to home remedies. But what I will say is this: I know that it works. Something else you want to keep in mind, though, is that when you make any kind of herbal remedy or healing kind of thing, you want to follow the directions of the people who have come before us who know how to use it. That means get yourself some training before you use it. Read up on it, ask questions, talk to somebody who knows how to do it, and then try it. And make sure you don't have contraindications. Contraindications could be you're taking a medication that could become a problem if you are using rue as well. Another issue that could happen is if you are with child. If you are pregnant, you should not be handling or taking rue. Topically, I can't tell you how much you could touch without a side effect because, again, I'm not a doctor, but I know I wouldn't touch it if I were pregnant and wanted to keep my child. Traditionally, it is one of those herbs that has been used in ways in which we will not discuss here by people who may have been forced into pregnancy. However, as always, I strongly advise you to look up the history of this plant and understand that medical care is not DIY. We do not do it ourselves because there's too much that can go wrong. So I want you to keep that in mind and take history with a grain of frankincense. Another thing about rue is some people take it with a tea, and they take this tea to help settle their system because rue has to do with the female generative organs, or should I say, reproductive system, insofar as it does affect menstruation. But again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to tell you go out and drink it. I will tell you that traditionally this is one of the uses, much like shepherd's purse is also one of those herbs that is used to help regulate the flow. Again, you want to be careful when you use it. For this reason, I do not recommend mixing it with mugwort and raspberry leaf into a tea because you don't know what could happen. Something else rue is very good for, and that is money. There are a plethora of money spells, specifically money drawing spells, all over the place in many cultures having to do with rue. Most of the time, these spells involve either water or oil. As you know, water is an element, but oil comes under the element of fire, believe it or not, because the oil of a plant is the spark or life of a plant when you infuse an herb into an oil. And remember, that's fire. So that's two different elements you can work with right there. Another thing you can do to purify a home is to plant some rue. My understanding is you're supposed to start on one side of the garden and then the other. Now, most people that I've read say you started on the left, first plant on the left, then on the right. But it could be reversed and you start the first plant on the right and then on the left. I'm not sure. And since I'm not sure, I'm not going to tell you that I know. You would know by the traditions. And traditions are not something you can get just reading in a book. You have to actually talk to somebody because sometimes people write things in a book that are not always true. Another good thing about rue is that it is something you can use for a purification bath. But keep in mind the liquid that comes out of rue that it secretes, especially when you break it, can be very irritating to the skin, as in it can cause a mild to severe form of dermatitis. You want to be very careful and very cautious when making a bath for yourself or other people. This is why it's so important to not just take any kind of bath that you find at any particular merchant and put it on your body without knowing where it came from. I'm not going to knock merchants. Many of them are very scrupulous and very meticulous in sourcing the herbs that they sell as well as the blends. However, not everybody is as careful as we would like them to be. So always take precautions before you put something on your body that could harm you. So if you decide to make a bath, and I mean a spiritual bath, what I would recommend is that you use the dried version of the herb. You're less likely to get the extruded liquid that comes, or the sap that's going to come from the plant in such a large and fresh quantity that will cause you as great of a reaction. If you are not sure you are allergic to rue, I would recommend getting some, or if you have dried rue, putting it into a cup of hot water and letting it infuse. To infuse, you're going to bring the water to a boil, put it to the side, drop the plant in, cover it, and let it sit for 10 minutes. Then test it on the part of your wrist and wait. Give yourself a good 10 minutes after you've tested it. Make sure it's not going to make you bump up or have any kind of reaction. Same thing with the smell of rue. Some people burn it anyway. And if you burn rue, you may get sick. So make sure you're not allergic to it that way. If you are allergic to latex, I have found the people that I know that are sensitive to latex are often sensitive to rue. So be careful because you don't want to cause anyone to break out. You know, rue can also regulate some other negative relationships in your life, but you just have to learn how to use it. There are spells everywhere, but this is one of those plants I think you should have because I believe that just carrying rue, and I know this to be true, is a good protection against low to mid level hexes. I didn't necessarily say curses, but definitely hexes and works. It's not a cure all, but it's a very good preventative. So I do recommend it. You don't have to be fancy about it. You don't have to buy extra virgin olive oil from the perfect store with the perfect place. It's not necessary. Throw it in the bottle of baby oil and keep it pushing. It'll infuse and you can always take it out later. Magic and life should be fun and simple, especially in the plant world. I believe in you and I believe you can make rue a part of you. Not learning how to use rue? I'd rue the day. Well, you knew that was coming. You can find many blends that can be very beneficial, as well as classes with me at a New Moon 22 in New Baltimore, Michigan. If you want to learn more about herbs, especially about rue, we're losing our light, but you'll never lose the light that shines within you. Thank you so much for joining me here on Explorations in Herbalism. This has been Kenya T. Coviak, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. My laptop should be working again, so you'll get to see my whole head that time. If there's an herb you'd like me to cover, let me know. See ya.